In this session, the focus is on what constitutes a theoretical contribution. So what we can expect during this session. Now, we all have had our share of rejections. Every now and then we get rejection. And one thing that we clearly see in those rejections is a lack of theoretical contribution. So how do we make proper theoretical contribution when we are conducting a study or when we propose to conduct a study? How do we identify our theoretical contributions? What is theory and what are its elements? So what constitutes a theory? We will discuss that as well. Followed by what is a theoretical contribution? What doesn't count as theoretical contribution? We have to understand this, that not everything is a contribution. Some are strong contributions while others may be weak contributions. So we will look into whether your contribution is strong enough or not. So what are common theoretical contributions? We are going to look into this with examples and how to write theoretical contributions or theoretical implications of your study. And how do you search theory? This is a very important question that I'm often asked by students or people who are working on their research as to what includes or how do we search our relevant theory. So in this case, I'm just going to use Google Scholar on how to use or how to search relevant theory. You can use other softwares like QDA Miner Lite or Mendeley for this purpose as well. Now, my paper or papers rejected due to lack of theoretical contributions. Now, this is one of the greatest weakness in academic research, which could be easily improved. Now, while you are proposing your concept, while you are proposing your research, you have to find out what actually is a contribution. What happens is we normally start research without identifying or without understanding what actually contribution means. For all of us, even obviously me like 3-4 years ago, for me contribution was something that has not been done by someone else. Well, that's only part of it. For example, if somebody has done research in America and I'm doing it in Pakistan, I would say, well, this is my contribution. Or if somebody has done a research maybe in a particular domain, and if I'm changing the domain, this might be a contribution for me. Well, no. Contribution sometimes is strong. In other cases, it might be weak as well. Now, these days, if you want to publish, you will have to make a significant contribution to existing body of knowledge, which has to go beyond answering the basic questions that are there. Maybe just like, okay, how will these relationship be in context of education, or maybe in another context? So you have to go beyond these basic questions. So now the session will focus on improving the quality of empirical studies. The emphasis is on improving the quality of theoretical contributions of empirical research. Setting up a study in such a way that it makes a theoretical contribution to the extant literature is the cornerstone of empirical research. So when you are doing empirical research that is focused on facts and figures, the one of the major or one of the thing that can lead your paper or your thesis to get published is your theoretical contribution. This is not to diminish the importance of good procedures. Now, one of the dilemma that I have witnessed in Asian countries is that we are too much focused on analysis and we do not understand the need of proper research contribution. On the other hand, sometimes we are too much focused on theoretical contributions and we do not understand the importance of procedures, measurement, and analysis. We might have a very good model at hand, but we have focused or we have used the wrong procedure maybe to collect data. We have used a wrong measure to gauge the concepts, and we have not used the analysis or we haven't used the softwares properly. Let me give you a very basic example. We all belong to education sector and we have all heard about the concept of social responsibility. Now let's assume we want to measure social responsibility in higher education. And for the measurement of social responsibility, let's say we take into account the model proposed by Carroll. And that model has got profits or economics at the very base of it. And then there are legal responsibilities, and then there are ethical responsibilities, and then there are philanthropic responsibilities. But if you apply that particular model in higher education, the problem is you do not have profits or or business or money making in higher education institutions. Higher education institutions are not the entities that make money. Although there are profit making entities in higher education, like there are private institutions, but even those private institutions, they do not highlight their profits. They don't like to do it. So if you are measuring higher education institution and their social responsibility through Carroll's model, your measurement is flawed. You cannot do that. Another example could be, recently I was told by, okay, there was a very good model by a student, a very complex model. But the problem was that he was, one of the variable was innovation, and innovation was measured at employee level, and the data was collected from banks. Well, bank employee can't even move a chair on his own or her own. So your measurement, how you measure the concept, where you are measuring the concept is quite important. So focusing too much on the theoretical contribution and diminishing the importance of procedures, measurement, and analysis won't get you anywhere. And with the current trends, with the current market, or with the current focus in quality research, you need everything to shine. Every section of your paper should be immaculate, perfect. So what's a theory? Now, theories have the potential to explain a phenomena. This puts theoretical work squarely ahead of mere descriptive or survey work, which just states phenomena as they are. So if you want to explain a certain concept, if you want to explain certain relationships, theory is your answer. Now, why should I use a theory? And how can this theory help me in theoretical contribution? For example, let's say you are considering to focus on a concept called servant leadership. And you go on to Google Scholar and you search for papers on servant leadership and project success. Now, what you come up with or what you get is maybe there are no results. Let me give you another example that is much easier to relate with a particular theory. Let's say you are focusing on a concept of social responsibility in project-based organization. But when you go on to the internet and search Google Scholar, you only find maybe there is no paper. Rather than finding one, let's assume you find no particular paper on social responsibility and project success. Now, how would you write a paper when there is no literature? This is a common question that is being asked by scholars from all over the world. How are we going to write a paper when we do not have a literature supporting our argument? You might have come up with this idea because maybe you are observing something, maybe you are going through different databases, maybe you said that, okay, project success is a very critical phenomena, and let's say social responsibility is a very critical concept as well. Both can affect each other. So you have a mind map. In your mind, you think of something and you can say, well, yes, they relate with each other because you know the basic theory of both of them. But when you go on the internet and try searching for the literature, you hardly find any. You don't find any literature supporting the argument. So what would you do? Would you cancel this idea of research, or whether you will go with certain research, such a research? If I was in your position, I would have gone with the research. But then I'm having a severe problem. There is no research on it. You know what gets published these days? What is original? If you want to get published, if you want to publish your research, you have to make sure that you are searching and you are conducting research on relationships that have not been tested before. If I propose too many new relationships, how do I get my literature? theory is your answer to this question. If you want to relate different concepts, find out what theory can help you relate these concepts. Now, if I was working on social responsibility and project success, and if I wanted to relate these two concepts, I would have gone to existing research and find out what theories have been used with corporate social responsibility and organizational variables like organizational performance. So when I went on to the literature, I found out that okay, resource-based view is one theory that can be utilized because social responsibility is a resource. And now using that resource or corporate social responsibility as a resource, my organization can improve its performance. And for a project-based organization, its performance is on or based on how successful their projects are. So you have to use a theory to explain the relationship. Let me give you another example. More will come as well. Now, recently I was writing a paper on servant leadership and life satisfaction, and my mediator was career satisfaction. Now, what happened was when I searched the internet, I couldn't find any paper on servant leadership and career satisfaction. So then I started searching for theories that can help me explain this relationship. So how do I search the theories? That will come later as well. But then I use the theory, leader member exchange theory, to explain the relationships. I'll share the papers as well so you can give it a read and understand how you can use different theories to explain the relationships. Theory is necessary and useful in most business and management research. Examiners expect to see propositions and hypotheses that are supported by theories or theoretical concepts, perspectives, and for empirical findings to be explained by theory or theoretical concepts perspective. So your theories are not only important when you are drafting your theoretical framework, but they are also important when you are discussing your results. Whether your findings complement a particular theory or are they against a particular theory. So recently, uh, in a review, the reviewer asked me to okay, what are the theoretical perspective? Discuss the theoretical perspective, or discuss your results in light of the theory. This one single line was mentioned by one of the reviewers. So here, what you need to do is you need to explain, you need to compare, contrast, and maybe see if they complement or negate the existing theories that you have utilized in your literature or to propose your research. Now, most business and management research aims to explain a particular behavior, such as a choice or an outcome that is associated with individuals. For example, leaders, employees, and consumers, or how they are associated with groups or systems. Theories are used to explain such behaviors. So we use theories to explain how maybe leaders, employees, consumers may be interrelated with each other, or how company policies affect employees or consumers, or how government policies may moderate the relationship between leaders and employees, or leaders and companies. So these are the things that particularly will help, or the theory will help you explain. For example, theories may be used to explain why companies are successful while others are not, or why a certain relationship in a certain context is positive while a certain relationship in another context may be negative. Another example, CSR and organizational performance. Now, we all think that the relationship should always be positive. But no, there are like a lot of research that explain that okay, this relationship has been negative as well. Recently, in one of our papers, I wrote a paper, and we expected the relationship between servant leadership and life satisfaction to be positive. But when we did our research and we did our analysis, the relationship came out to be negative. Now this is we were amazed to see okay, how can the relationship between servant leadership and life satisfaction be negative? Now then we used a particular theory, the concepts that that there are in existing research, that how can we justify this particular relationship. So theory will help you justify the relationships that are there or that come up after your data analysis. Now, what are the elements of the theory? Now, Witten 1989 argues that the theory contains four essential elements. What? This is particularly important. The factors in the theory, this is what make up the theory. These are the constructs in the theory. So what is making up the theory? What are the factors that make up the theory? How these factors are interrelated? These refer to the arrows that connect the boxes. For example, servant leadership is influencing job satisfaction. So here you see that, okay, these are the factors and this is how they are related. So what are the factors? How are the factors related with each other? Now this one here, why the factors are related? This is the critical or most important element in a theory. If you are not explaining why the factors are related, or why the factors should be related, or why the factors should be included in a particular study, then you are not making a theoretical contribution. It's not just that you mention, okay, these are the factors that have been taken into account in existing research. Now I am proposing a research whereby I am taking these factors. For example, what do I mean by what here? Let me explain this a bit in a bit more detail. Let's assume I'm conducting a study on enablers of knowledge management processes in an organization. So existing research has used leadership styles, let's say entrepreneurial leadership, knowledge oriented leadership, transformational leadership, transactional leadership. Based on my study or initial observation, I find that, okay, these 4 5 leadership styles have been taken into account. What I do is I propose that, okay, I'm going to use sustainable leadership and see its impact on knowledge management processes. So what I'm doing is I'm covering the what aspect. Okay, this is the factor that can influence knowledge management processes. The theory that I'm using to establish the relationship is knowledge based view. So I am saying that, okay, these are the factors that could affect knowledge management processes. The next thing is I mentioned, okay, this is the factor or sustainable leadership can influence knowledge management processes. So there is an arrow drawing from knowledge management processes to sustainable leadership to knowledge management processes. So I've covered the two aspects when I'm explaining my or proposing my research, but they are not as important as this factor, the third element. Why do you think sustainable leadership will lead to improved knowledge management processes? Why do you think that studying this relationship is important? Why do you think that studying this relationship will add to the body of knowledge, will add to existing literature, will improve the theory, the knowledge based view, or will enrich the knowledge based view? If you are not identifying the why aspect and you are identifying the what aspect or how aspect, still your research will be weak. In order to strengthen your research, you will have to explain the why aspects. Why the factors are important, why the factors are related, why should we study these factors? And finally, the fourth essential element comprises of who, where, and when, which represent the boundary conditions or moderators, and they help explain what possible change the existing prescribed relationship in the model, or what could change the existing prescribed relationship in the model. Who here refers to level of analysis. Are we conducting research from individuals, departmental level, or organizational level? So knowledge management processes can be at organizational level, where we look into the organizational level initiatives about knowledge management, or we can have individual level as well, where we look into maybe knowledge collection, knowledge distribution, knowledge sharing at individual level, or maybe it could be departmental level as well. Where actually refers to the context. Where are we going to conduct this study? Is it higher education? Is it a manufacturing sector? Is it service orientation, a service sector? Is it a sports sector? Is it something else? And when are you conducting this study? What's the timing? Is it in COVID, or is it before COVID, after COVID? Something like that. But again, mere mentioning or merely changing the context, the timing, or the level will not make your study publishable unless or until you've got this. So you can have all these three, but you miss out on the why factor. Why these factors are related. Why you should study this particular aspect. Why should you relate these factors? Why should we add another variable as an enabler? If you haven't got this point number three, you will not be able to publish your research. Although you might have mentioned what, you might have mentioned how, you might have mentioned who, where, when, you won't be able to publish. You might get lucky, I'm not saying that, but in my experience, if you miss out on this why, you are like, your paper won't be published. This is my experience. Now, a model obviously is a representation of theory which is generally shown in graphical or mathematical form. Once you have a theory that helps you explain the what, how, why, who, where, when aspects, you give it a shape in the form of a diagram, and you call it your model. So what's the contribution of your research? The purpose of academic research is to add our knowledge or understanding of a given topic of interest in academic community. So you only add something when there is no prior knowledge available. If there is prior knowledge available, then you are not adding something to the topic. You're not adding any value. If you've come across the papers published by Emerald, you will see there a section of value and originality. So if you're not adding any value, if your research is not original, then obviously you are not making any contributions. In a general sense, research is concerned about understanding how the world works. Researchers from different fields and subfields focus on understanding how a small part of the world works. Obviously, it's very important to understand. Maybe it was day before yesterday, someone here in Pakistan, in the city of Karachi or Hyderabad, called me and said that I can't focus on what variables I should take in my study. I keep on reading and I keep on discovering new variables that I want to add to my research. Well, you will have to find a scope, a conceptual scope for your study. I'm not saying reading is bad. Reading without focus and limits won't get you anywhere. If you keep on reading and you are devoid of the objective of your research, purposiveness, one of the hallmarks of research. What's the purpose of your research? What is it that you want to do through your research? You have to set a conceptual scope of your study. You can't have 30, 40 variables or constructs in your study, each measured using 7, 8 items, and then you've got a questionnaire of 5, 6, 7 pages that nobody wants to fill. If it's a MS or if it's PhD, you will have to set a conceptual scope. Try to define, try to find out relationships that actually add to existing research. And here, I might forget it later, so I just want to mention it. Sometimes we are just taking new relationships, but we are just studying common variables. What happens is we are too much interested in studying job satisfaction, motivation, maybe culture, commitment, engagement, participation, turnover, word of mouth, something like that. But these are very weak variables. They are employee level variables. If you want to get published, you will have to have stronger variables in your study. Now, when I say strong variables, what do I mean by strong variables? Variables that are at organizational level, influencing the individual level. For example, leadership. For example, intellectual capital. For example, corporate social responsibility. For example, maybe corporate governance. These are the variables that are at organizational level. Your readership or the reviewers or the general readership is not interested in mere study or mere reading about few common variables. They are interested in getting a bigger picture. So you need to focus on stronger variables. Now, all the variables that I have mentioned, you will see that there are journals on each one of them. You will hardly see a journal on employee commitment. Maybe there is maybe one or two journals somewhere, but I haven't come across any. You will hardly see a journal on turnover. You will see a journal on organizational behavior rather. But then again, when you see the papers in that particular journal, a very good journal, you will see that the work is very complex enough. So they are mixing and matching the stronger variables with employee level variables or individual variables. And then obviously the papers published in Journal of Organizational Behavior are methodological, and they make sure that there is both theoretical and methodological contribution. Now, hence marketing researchers or any researchers, they add to knowledge in their own particular field. So if you are an HR related researcher or you are in the field of HR, you are contributing to the theory of HR. You are in non-marketing or non-profit marketing, then you are contributing in non-profit marketing. If you are in the field of marketing, you are contributing in the field of marketing, so on and so forth. So again, as we mentioned, it's all about adding knowledge. So do you mean by knowledge discovery? Now, scholarly research aims to discover new knowledge by identifying a deficiency or gap in our knowledge area. What has been done and what could be done, or what could this research can be taken into. So for that, obviously, you need to identify what you can add to existing body of knowledge. So you are emphasizing both the need for knowledge discovery and the contribution you intend to make in your research thesis or a research article. If this issue is not addressed effectively, if you are not able to discover knowledge, if you are not able to identify what is it that you have, or what is it that nobody has done and you are trying to do, what is it that adds value to existing research, what is it that is original in your research, your article will be weak. As we have mentioned, that no matter if you've got methodological quality, your article will still be weak. Now, researchers often spend too little time developing the theoretical contribution of their studies, while placing strong emphasis on reporting significant findings and model fit indices. Our focus is too much on questionnaires, the analysis tools that we will use. Maybe our model will get a good fit or not. Maybe we'll have reliable or valid measures or not. But these things are important, but not as important as your theoretical contribution. So more on knowledge discovery. A new context is not a contribution. It is a contribution, but not strong enough. So if you say that, okay, I am doing this research in service sector, well, while previously this research has been done in manufacturing sector, this is not entirely a contribution. If you want to make a contribution, add some new variables as well. So collecting data from one country and then using that research maybe in another country. Okay, this research was done in India, maybe this was done in America, Australia, Canada, so I'm doing it in Pakistan. This is replication, and replication is no contribution to the literature. Collecting data from one industry or another industry, this is not a contribution. So social scientists think in terms of interconstruct relationship. We all are social scientists, and our focus is on interconstruct relationship, but those constructs should be original, some relationship that have not been studied before. When I say that, okay, some relationship, for example, maybe you have got an independent variable and a dependent variable. So the relationship between independent and dependent has been studied before, but previously nobody has studied the mediators. So you can have an IV DV that has been studied before, but you can have new mediators or moderators. It is knowledge discovery. So a gap in our knowledge or literature gap is the result of inter-construct relationship that has not been previously examined. So these mediators have not been studied in the relationship between IV and DV. So this is your new knowledge discovery. So inter-construct relationship. Here is a diagrammatic view. A, you are proposing an important new antecedent. So this is obviously new knowledge discovery. You are proposing a new moderator. You are proposing a new mediator. You are proposing a new outcome. All of this is your new knowledge discovery. You are adding something to the body of knowledge. But again, let me give you another tip. Sometimes the students come to me and say, okay, we have found this variable that has not been studied in this particular relationship. And my next question, most of the times is, okay, what if somebody maybe across the border, maybe somewhere in America, have read the same paper, identified the same variable, and is doing and has presented the same model and conducts a research well before you complete your research. He will be able to publish and you won't. So when you are discovering or trying to discover new relationship, when you are trying to identify new variables, what you need to do is you need to have variables identified from at least 3 papers. So you need to obviously identify variables from multiple sources, multiple studies. You can have multiple antecedents from multiple sources or multiple moderators from multiple sources, maybe multiple mediators from multiple sources or multiple outcomes from multiple sources. Now this will help you discover new knowledge. And then you are in a safe position as well, because obviously it's highly unlikely that the same person somewhere else in the world would have studied the same 3 papers and got hold of the same 3 variables rather than giving it or leaving it to chance with one paper. So what and how? Although in principle it is possible to make an important theoretical contribution by simply adding or subtracting factors. So as I mentioned earlier, what means that, okay, these are the factors that I'm going to add to my model or the new model that I'm studying. Let's say, there is a research. Let me give you an example as well. Let's say somebody comes across my research paper. Let's say someone has come across this research paper and they have identified, okay, that we have done this model. Now what they do is, instead of doing something else or anything else, they just say that, okay, let's add sustainable leadership here instead of entrepreneurial leadership. So instead of entrepreneurial leadership, they decide to add sustainable leadership here. Now they are covering just the what aspect. If they mention, okay, this particular research, Latif et al. 2019, assess the impact of entrepreneurial leadership on knowledge management processes, whereas we are going to use or assess the impact of sustainable leadership on knowledge management processes, you are just covering the what aspect. You cannot just mention that, okay, this is the variable that I'm taking into account. Instead of mentioning what and how, that, okay, this is the variable and this is how it is related, you will have to mention why as well. One way to demonstrate the value of proposed change in a list of factors is to identify how this change affects the accepted relationship between variables, the how aspect. Just a list of variables does not constitute a theory or a theoretical contribution. So the addition of a new variable to an existing list should not be mistaken as a theoretical contribution. This is again a very critical misconception among students. This is the relationship that I'm studying and this has not been studied before, so this is my contribution. No, this is not your contribution. This is just what has not been done before and what you are doing. In order to make a contribution, you will have to identify why do you want this factor in this particular relationship. Relationship, not lists, are the domain of the theory. You are not listing factors that could affect a particular variable or another endogenous variable. You have to provide a more detailed insight into the variable. why this particular variable must be studied in this particular context, why this particular variable should be studied with this particular theory, and how will this particular relationship, or how will this particular variable help you further improve the insights in that particular theory. So this is again very important. What and how, they only describe, they do not provide any insight. But what is a theoretical contribution? Why is your theoretical contribution? And this is probably the most fruitful but also the most difficult avenue of theory development. This not only includes the identification of variables like mediators or moderators, they, that help explain not only the mechanism of impact but also the boundary condition, but you will have to explain why should I add this variable? What is it that it does for theory? So knowledge-based view has been used in my research to explain the impact or relationship of knowledge management processes with other variables. By adding sustainable leadership to my relationship, how will it enrich knowledge-based view? It will enrich knowledge-based view because in previous research or in existing research, sustainable leadership has not been discussed with knowledge management processes. This is one part of ascertaining or identifying your theoretical contribution. Then you have to explain why sustainable leadership could be important for knowledge management processes. This is another part of explaining the why aspect. So these are the things that you explain. You give your reasoning why this variable should be part of your study. So utilizing a theory to explain the relationship between variables where there has been no empirical research, for instance, using knowledge-based view to explain how entrepreneurial leadership affect knowledge management process as explained. So previous research has not used how entrepreneurial leadership affects knowledge management processes. So this is your contribution to the theory. This is what you are adding to the theory. You are enriching the knowledge-based view by adding new variables that have not been tested previously with this particular concept or the theory. Who, when, where, another element or other elements. Generally, obviously, it is insufficient to point out limitations in current conceptions of a theory range of application. So you cannot say that, okay, this research was done before COVID, so I'm doing it in COVID. So you cannot say that, okay, this research was done in America, so I'm doing it in India or Pakistan. So this research was done on individuals, so I'm doing it at group level. This is not enough unless or until you've got the why aspect. So now here are a few examples of the theoretical contributions. Whereas self-determination theory traditionally pays attention to the various types and work-related sources of human motivations for displaying particular workplace behaviors, no attention is paid to the needs and obligations individuals may have outside the work domain. So previously they've used self-determination theory to assess a particular type of human motivation. They may be using new motivations or new type of behaviors. The authors make a theoretical contribution by explaining the process by which ethical leaders influence employees to exchange in um, citizenship behaviors, addressing calls to understand how social learning theory can be used to understand. So now they are using social learning theory with ethical leadership and explain its relationship with CCB, corporate citizenship behaviors. Now, this particular single 3 lines explain the contribution to the theory. So what is it that you are doing for the theory? These relationships have not been studied in light of this theory. So your study is maybe the first or the second one to explain these relationship in this particular or with this particular theory. Another example, our study makes an important theoretical contribution in that the results help in articulating the underlying process. So when you are using mediation, and you've got mediators in your study and you are trying to explain the influence of IV on DV through mediators, you can write your contributions like this. We make a theoretical contribution by explaining the process by which ethical leaders influence employees to engage in citizenship behavior which benefit those outside the organization. In doing so, we are addressing this particular call and explaining this relationship by using this particular theory. Another example, as far as theoretical contribution of this paper is concerned or are concerned, the study contributes to our understanding of some related constructs that have not been explored in depth in the previous literature relating to CSRCL. This was our own paper and we took new mediators that have not been taken before. So we are adding something to the new knowledge discovery. Now, this is something very important and this is what I wanted to discuss as well. And again, people have often asked, how do we search for theories? So I've got a few search strings here. Now let's say I'm working on servant leadership and I want to find out which theories have been used with servant leadership. So I can use this string. Now if I'm interested in finding out whether this particular theory has been used with this particular concept of servant leadership, so I can use this particular string or these particular strings. If I've got two variables and I know that these are the two variables in my study, I can relate or add these two variables and add the word theory to see which theory has been used to explain these relationships. So here I see in title. So these two words appear or must appear in the title of the paper. And this word can appear in the text of the paper. Same is the case with others. These are a few examples. Let me try one of them for you. Let's say this one. So I want to search whether complexity theory has been used with servant leadership. Yes, complexity theory has been used with servant leadership. See these papers? See these papers? So now I do not have to open thousands of papers on servant leadership to search which theory or whether complexity theory have been used or not. I can just simply ask Google. You know, these tools, they are critical for you to solve your problems. Unless or until you are not able to understand these tools, Google Scholar and things like that, you won't be able to solve your literature review problems. So if you are searching for theoretical contribution, for example, you are doing a study and you want to find out how theoretical contribution is written. Again, go to Google, just put in that query. If you are working on theoretical contribution, obviously you want to write theoretical contribution, so this should appear in the text. And your topic is on leadership. Let's say your topic is on servant leadership rather than just leadership. So you'll come across papers that have mentioned or that have servant leadership in their title, and in their paper they have mentioned a theoretical contribution. Just open this paper, read how they are writing the theoretical contribution, and you will be able to write your own theoretical contribution. So this was almost all about theoretical contribution, what it is, how it should be done, how it can be located, how theories can be located, and what actually is your theoretical contribution.